So my presentation today is called Business Intelligence and the Aesthetic Interface Between Them. I'm going to start. So in 1983, Frederick Jameson established that arts function as a pedagogical tool, one of the most important functions it would have for the Marxist project, had been eclipsed. He made his statement in the presentation of the concept of cognitive mapping, a tool for understanding our position in society in order to ignite social struggle, realized through aesthetics. For Jameson, this would be done through systems of representation that would reflect and conceptualize the alienated lived experience of the late capitalism subject. He didn't specify how this would happen, but it would definitely be a pedagogic experience based in aesthetics. Of course, the cognitive mapping of the postmodernist Marxist project didn't happen. However, there seems to be a raising awareness on our own positions. We can call this as a class struggle comeback kind of thing, as you can see in this image. One of the claims of this paper is that today we have a tool within our research that can be repurposed and analyzed to create a discursive space of recognition and could serve as a possible platform to revise the motives and purposes of cognitive mapping. And that, I want to say, is business intelligence platforms. Business intelligence is an umbrella term that was defined in 1999 by Howard DRESSNER, the founder of the Gartner Group, as a set of concepts and methods to improve business decision-making by using fact-based support system. Today, this concept is used widely for all platforms that present options of data governance, discovery, analytics, and predictability. This is a tool derived from business administration that manages almost all data, business and not business related, mainly through the creation of reports that respond to certain predefined queries, and it has been massively expanded to the field of visualization and ad hoc query creation. In the last decade, the BI market has grown exponentially. BI platforms are being used for everything, from military to nonprofit logistics. Their use will become even more pervasive by 2020, when the Internet of Things will achieve 25 billion connected data producing things, and BI will be the only way to govern all this data. The 2016 Gartner Magic Quadrant report, which is the study that determines where the market is trending, who is leading the changes, and who is left behind, states that BI is going further away from IT and closer to business building platforms that can be intuitively and easily accessed and managed by everyone. This is an aspect that we will have to keep in mind for the future of my argument. Today, I will define interfaces in general and BI platforms specifically as places of interaction between human users and software, which have a fundamental role in the transition of visualization, of transmission of data and information, hence the reading they offer us of the world. These interfaces are not neutral depoliticized spaces. On the contrary, they demand and generate ideologies, politics, and behaviors both in humans and machines. For that reason, it is fundamental for us to question the so-called neutrality of the interface, especially in times when almost all of our information consumption, domestic, corporate, and governmental, is defined by the visual interface. The algorithms that control it and the tendency to make these interfaces more intuitive and invisible. Another key factor that I want to mention about BI platforms are the alliances they can form, with which data providers they work, what flexibility they provide, what security partners they offer, etc. These alliances affect their place in the market and their location within the Magic Quadrant that I explained a minute before, and make up for a force that it's much bigger than any separate company on its own. Tableau, which is the market leader, which has been the market leader for 3 years in a row, for example, provides services to Cisco and the United States government and works with data provided by Amazon. And far from trying to demonize this system, I want to show the potential repurposing this data amassing and control can have. This has to be an opportunity for a different kind of activism that rethinks the administrative nature of these interfaces as such, analyze its objective with other practices like cognitive mapping, for example, maybe even amplifying access to the data and its experiences. Well, in order to start understanding how I propose to do this, I will review a bit of the critique of administrative platforms from a general standpoint. I'm not going to go into an extensive history of interface critique. Rather, I will stay with accounts that I think are relevant for what I propose. All business analyses indicate that BI interfaces that use data visualization are trending and proliferating beyond the purely administrative world or the business world. They're migrating to organizational tasks of multiple fields, from ecology to geology to politics. The multiple usability and malleability of BI means that its organizational structures are being adapted and translated. This might also present an opportunity for thinking about an interface that enables the flipping of the viewer to an active awareness in the realm of knowledge through visualization. That's why I think this slide is interesting, because even they know it themselves. They're like talking about it all the time. The way I approach this proposal is to borrow strategies both from design theory and exhibitionary practice that acknowledge how the way we present information determines perception of that information and adjudicates ideological value. Design practices obviously acknowledge these problems. However, the approaches from exhibitionary practice enables us to address the issue directly from ideology critique and access, instead of parting from the questions only from the questions of neutrality or invisibility as a given for efficiency. Furthermore, if invisible user interfaces permit the user to navigate the system without major changes in data content, visualization systems or data visualization systems, as well as exhibitionary practices, provide a unique reading, create new information both in the subject and, it could be said, in the database, and always enhance the amount of data and knowledge available. I would like to ask myself if BI through the data visualization interface could break away from the myth of interactivity, participation, naturalization, invisibility, to create a state of awareness in the user. That this type of interface could be the ideal tool for cognitive mapping and could create conscious behavior. Now you might be asking yourselves, how are all these things related? Well, in September 2014, Tableau, the company that I already mentioned, a BI market leader, held its 7th annual data conference. They do it every year and it's always growing. In the last 11 years, the company has developed relationships with more than 20,000 clients worldwide that comprise governments, corporate organizations, etc. As I briefly mentioned before, the 2015 and 2016 Magic Quadrant recognized an ongoing trend in BI that has been developing for the last 7 years. That is a transition to platforms that can be rapidly implemented and can be used by either analysts or business users to find insights quickly, or by IT to quickly build analytics analytics content to meet business requirements to deliver more timely business benefits. Everything is about speed. This transition marks a fundamental shift in the use of data, analytics, and BI, making the data more accessible for faster real-time understanding, transforming its formats from prefix reports and tables to customizable visualization tools, both on the aesthetic and the algorithmic levels. I'm mentioning this because at the 2014 conference, Tableau's CEO and co-founder Christian Chabot presented the company's mission in a keynote called The Art of Analytics, where he stated that their software is a tool for unleashing the creative power of data. There, Chabot defines the 4 keys that guide Tableau's work process toward the development of their platform. These concepts are all borrowed from artistic practices and art. Experimentation, speed, expressiveness, and control. Tableau provides the BI user with a blank canvas to create visualizations of data according to a specific business need, to unleash creativity, because both artists and analysts are on a mission to find meaning, to challenge us to look at the world differently, and supporting creative thinking needs to be part of BI that brings better answers, clearer thinking, and better thinking. All of that I'm quoting him, of course. This crossover and appropriation between analytical thinking and artistic thinking, which basically triggered my research, is of fundamental importance to the Tableau business ideology, and as a matter of fact, to many technology market leaders. I propose it is not less important to question and influence this infusion from the side of aesthetic practices. Giving the user the freedom to create from scratch, to develop through algorithms and drag and drops, and to make it easy to see the world differently is a fundamental part of technology discourse. What this art analysis crossover could benefit from is the criticality of aesthetic creation towards its own visual power. BI is rapidly becoming the tool through which organizations and corporations and governments see the world and regulate how we see it. Now, before I go any further, I would like to look at BI platforms as an administrative platform and characterize them by three values that are established by Matthew Fuller and roughly in their book, Evil Media. Not that I think that BI is evil, but just that's the name of the book. The first characteristic is that administrative media enables frictionless communication. Fuller and Goffey claim that the transparency of the facilitation of activity that is produced when devices, practices, protocols, and procedures, gadgets and applications mesh and synchronize simultaneously creates vast black box or obscurely grayed out zones taken for granted, more or less stabilizing and stabilized artifacts that permit the abstract social relation characteristic of frictionless communication to take root. Basically, frictionless communication is a fundamental advantage of this media, and it stands for the stimulation of activities that have consequences that we don't feel on our own flesh. The second aspect is the scientific stance that these platforms require and how that carries the algorithmization of decision. The notion that if a proper or correct decision structure is constructed, all decisions made from it will be correct or the most correct, puts the emphasis on the rule and not on the result. This process works on the assumption that if it's done by the rules of the correct data collection algorithm, then the subsequent actions will be correct and promote stasis instead of contingency. The third value is what they call abstraction layers. Bureaucracy and administration require generalizations and abstractions of information in order to function. The selection of data that comes with abstraction is intrinsic to any type of knowledge, basically. And that doesn't make it negative, as long as we keep considering that data is a section, a cut, a partial point of view. Not because it is subjective, but because when we zoom in, we miss the bigger picture. Also, an abstraction layer might call for a task to be completed, a square to be drawn, or a statement to be composed without specifying the means required. Abstraction thus implies a measure of operation that is kind of hands-off. This hands-off aspect, combined with a selective forgetting of sorts, implies compromising responsibility. Something about forgetting that the data is generated by humans behind. And this toilet is a funny story. I mean, it's an interesting story. It's an interesting example. There's a story about how this company MaxMind that creates IP mapping rounded up latitude and longitudes in the center of the United States, and they defined the center of the United States in a farm that's in Kansas. And for 10 years now, the people that live in that farm have been getting the FBI investigations because all the suspicious IPs or all the strange things that happen related to IPs go there, signalize a point, and that's a present of a broken toilet that angry neighbors left there. Data, even when gathered under rational propositions of these MaxMind examples, might not reflect truth, but only a partial version of the truth. We have to accept that it is only a proposition towards truth. Thus, we should create interfaces and programs that understand themselves as propositions with which we can work, while necessarily we have to include within them spaces of contradiction. We need models that open up and help us ask more questions rather than close realities as resolute. Data visualization platforms are excellent for opening more questions and adding new information to the database. BI platforms that base their abilities on systems of visualizations are clear demonstrations of this ability on one hand, but the administrative limitations of the platform also demonstrate how the view from a specific database or specific functionalities within the platform can also form and inform this view. Now I want to proceed on theoretical propositions that will be taken both from design studies and exhibition studies, and will analyze BI's visual power. Graphic designer and theorist Joanna Drucker defines the interface as the space between the rational organization of content and an intuitive way of using that content. For her, the design of the interface is the armature or construction of the space of provocation, in which performative events that define us in that interaction take place. Interface is what we read and how we read, combined through engagement. It is a provocation to cognitive experience, but it's also an enunciative apparatus. I think that's fundamental. It is fundamental then to consider this structure as information, not as a plain point of access, and as such, it manipulates value. According to Drucker, one of the problems with contemporary interfaces is the lack of recognizable authorship. Who is responsible for said interface? The body behind the creation of the interface is erased, while there is a specific ideological conceptualization to the interface's creation. Thus, she calls for the creation of a humanistic interface in which speaker and spoken to are recognized. In the humanistic interface, the critical design of interpretative interface will push beyond the goals of efficient and transparent design for the organization of behaviors and actions, and mobilize a critical network that calls to attention its madeness, and by extension the constructedness of knowledge, its interpretative dimensions. This will orchestrate at least a bit the shift from conceptions of interfaces of things and entities to that of an event space. Thus, we need an interface that doesn't take its materiality or constructedness for granted. It discloses the limits of the medium. This combined with the need to go further and present multiple imaging modes that create what she calls palimpsestic or parallax views of objects that make it more difficult to imagine reading as an act of recovering truth only, and render the interpretative act itself more visible. The task of modeling diversity, of exposing difference among ontologies and ideologies, in particular those grounded in the administrative sensibility. This aspect is particularly important to BI platforms that are based on administrative sensibilities and modus operandi, which, as I said multiple times by now, will soon govern data from all aspects of life, but are not necessarily grounded on a rationality that aims for constant revisability or showing difference or marking how ontologies become ideology. Drucker establishes that within the interface we can find different frames that serve the function of text and paratext, and that's where difference can come. It is through these different frames that make difference explicit that we can construct her palimpsestic interface. Now I'm going to go quickly through the exhibition studies view. In his now seminal book, Inside the White Cube, Brian O'Doherty describes how the exhibition since the origins of modernist ideologies and idiosyncrasies has shaped the way we look at art in its new temples, museums, and galleries. In the contemporary model, the thing is turned into art when discourse and ideas about art are concentrated around it. The object is a medium for transmission of ideas, similar to the scientific sense of data in an administrative platform where we were discussing before. Ideas serve as context for objects to present a concept through discussion in the public space of the exhibition. The contextualization is important, but more important, it should be the responsibility that comes with making ideas public and owning to that task.
5 minutes, Roxana?
Sorry?
5 minutes?
Great. Context becomes content, and in an interface that is inevitable. Instead of escaping that, we should recognize it. Context becomes content. Context was always content. The question is, when do we start accounting for it? If we think back to the administrative practices of like BI, again, the context of accuracy or scientific knowledge assumes precision. And if we think of how ontologies are ideologies that define the functions of BI even more, O'Doherty states that hanging editorializes on matters of interpretation and value, and is unconsciously influenced by taste and fashion. Subliminal cues indicate the audience its deportment. This is, I think, crucial for everything we see, but for BI and visualization in general, also crucial. Based on that, in ontological ideological strategies of visual organization, what is more important or up in the hierarchy defines the way we look at things. That's basic. The parameters we add to our formula to editorialize the visualization can lead to the viewer on one way or the other. And we tend to ignore that narratives, there's my cat here, sorry. We tend to ignore the narratives that are defined by our, 1 minute. There's an uninvited cat in this presentation. We tend to ignore that narratives are defined by our interfaces and their help to produce visualizations. But all narratives are performative, like an exhibition narrative in a way. Furthermore, most of us read the hanging on an exhibition or the visuals in an interface as we could chew gum unconsciously and from habit. However, there are certain actions that displace automatic reading, and I think this is where things are interesting. The character of these gestures wises the viewer up and serves as didactic, maybe as spaces of contradiction and experimentation. And that's I think, where what we shouldn't be afraid of. These gestures, when happening within the exhibition space and the VI visualization platform, can open us to other narratives and alternatives. The first step to do that is to understand that the white wall's apparent neutrality is an illusion. The development of the pristine, placeless white cube is one of modernism's triumphs, a development of commercial, aesthetic, and technological. The same thing could be said about the gray windows of the interface. This analogy is inevitable, the white cube that obscures the economic and power relations that make it be, and that is repeated globally, and as if we were that's a language that we all understand in terms of idiom and consequences, but in reality it's not showing the infrastructure behind it. That sounds like a gray interface to me. What would it mean to do this kind of gesture in a visualization interface? Gesture that wises up the viewer. Does this interaction mean further space for freedom? For the network of platforms like BI to be closer to creating collective social benefits, there are some aspects of responsibility, accountability, publicness, and revisability that need to be advanced. We need to think of BI platforms and visualizations in general as a space for this type of interaction that is collective, iterative, revisable, accountable, future-oriented. In this way, we will be able to depart from the purely administrative rationality towards a rationality that sees further into the social. If we imbue BI platforms with the intentions of cognitive mapping, for example, in the terms of subject positioning, and with exhibition-making criticality of the visual, we might have a tool in our hands. This might be a simplistic, flattening idea, but recognition and authorship seem to be the way to go, both in the exhibition space and the BI interface. Acknowledging the limitations of our ontologies by ways of assumption and rationalization is the only real way that knowledge can be communicated, and always entails revision. That's it. That's it.
Yes.
Done. And someone asked me about this image. I want to explain it.
Great, thank you.